On October 24th, the heavyweight champion of the world, Wladimir Klitschko, takes on the undefeated Tyson Fury in what will be the 19th defense of Klitschko's historic reign as heavyweight champion. Now, most boxing experts around the world consider Klitschko among the very best pound-for-pound fighters on the planet. But the fans still seem to be kind of split down the middle. There's a lot of hot, cold, love, hate. There's not much middle ground when it comes to Wladimir Klitschko. Well, I'm going to end the debate once and for all. I'm going to lay out all the facts on a silver platter because win, lose, or draw, October 24th, Wladimir Klitschko is already an all-time great heavyweight. Now, I mentioned the fight with Tyson Fury coming up. That is the third and final fight of a three-fight deal Klitschko signed with HBO last year. The three opponents he's faced in that contract, Kubrat Pulev, Bryant Jennings, and Tyson Fury, were all undefeated, legitimate top 10 heavyweights with some solid wins as professionals. Their combined records, 63-0, 39 knockouts. Average height, 6'5", average reach, 83 inches, which is interesting because Wladimir Klitschko's reach is only 81 inches. Bryant Jennings had much longer arms than Wladimir Klitschko, and he was able to use those long arms to give Vlad some problems. So it'll be interesting to see if Tyson Fury can do that. Not to mention that Fury is over 12 years younger than Klitschko and over 3 inches taller. But it doesn't matter if Klitschko knocks this guy out in one punch and scores a spectacular knockout of the year kind of stoppage. The haters are always going to find a reason to hate. Now, I've tried to condense all the Klitschko hateration into 5 typical talking points that I tend to hear from these guys. The Klitschko hater talking points are as follows. Number 1, he fights in a weak heavyweight era. Number 2, the early losses due to his bad chin, quote unquote. Number 3, he fights in a horribly boring style. Number 4, his older brother Vitaly was better, quote unquote. And number 5, lack of a signature opponent or a signature rival. Before I break down those hater talking points, I want to go over some quick numbers with you guys. And I understand boxing is not necessarily a numbers sport, not as much as baseball and things like that. But when you are a long reigning champion, as Klitschko is in boxing, numbers do start to matter. Okay, so here we go. Before Klitschko even turned professional, he had an amateur record of 134 wins, 6 losses. He won many tournaments, international tournaments all over the place. It all culminated in 1996 with a gold medal win in the Atlantic Games. Later that same year, I believe in November of '96, Klitschko went pro. So far as a professional, he's 64-3 with 53 knockouts. He has been a pro for almost 19 years now. He has boxed 346 rounds as a pro. Throughout Vlad's career, he's defeated 12 former or current world champions, taken 12 undefeated fighters' O's. Fury represents possibly his 13th. And he's defeated 5 former Olympic medalists. Let's talk about his current reign as champion. So far, it's 9.5 years going as champion right now for Vlad. He's 19-0 during this stretch with 14 knockouts. It all started in April of 2006 with a 7th round TKO against Chris Bird. Since that time, he's unified all but one of the major sanctioning organization titles. The WBC is the only one he doesn't have. He established a new lineage in 2009 with a 9th round stoppage over Ruslan Shagayev, which earned him the Ring magazine title. The combined record of all the opponents during Klitschko's championship run, 564, 30, and 13. For you math geniuses out there, that's 93% winning percentage. Indeed, Wladimir Klitschko is in historic company already as a fighter, okay? He's got 18 defenses of his current title reign. That's third to 2 special fighters. Larry Holmes had 20, Joe Louis had 25. I mentioned the 9.5 year span as champion. There's only one fighter in the history of boxing, one heavyweight champion, that ever had a longer span. And that was, again, the great Joe Louis, 11 years, 8 months. A little side note though, Joe Louis was in the Army, I believe between 1942 and 1946, he only fought one time. So if you take out that time that he was in the military, only fighting exhibitions, those weren't pro fights he was fighting at that time. If you take that period out, Wladimir Klitschko is the longest reigning heavyweight champion ever. Even haters gotta recognize that. Game, peep, game. What I find interesting is that Klitschko is in that esteemed company with two all-time great heavyweights, Joe Louis, Larry Holmes, but two guys that fought in what most historians would call weaker eras. You know, Joe Louis had his famed Bum of the Month club. And that brings me to Klitschko hater talking point number one. He fights in a horrible heavyweight division. Okay, let's talk about this a little bit. I think that this division currently is actually a little underrated. These guys coming out of the amateur system from Eastern Europe, you know, they have hundreds of amateur fights. They're winning tournaments. They're fighting against the best from all over the world. And that includes the guys from Cuba, many of which now are starting to come out as well. And they're going to the Olympics. I don't know. Compare head to head and don't just go on BoxRec, okay? Actually watch footage on YouTube. Compare the guys that Jack Johnson was fighting. Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano, even Jack Dempsey, even Sonny Liston, some of the guys he was fighting. Compare some of those guys to the guys like Ruslan Chagayev, like even a David Haye. And you tell me, is this era that much worse than those eras of yesteryear? I just, you know, I think that people don't like change. And the heavyweight division has changed. It looks different, it sounds different, the style of fighting's different. Might not be your cup of tea, it might be too technical. But to say that this is the worst era in heavyweight history is hyperbole. Klitschko hater talking point number two. He lost, and he has a weak chin. So for me, I really don't rate the Ross Purity loss as a big deal. To me, the losses to Corey Sanders and Layman Brewster are really the bad losses on Klitschko's record. And Klitschko had been a pro for 6 years when he lost to Sanders, 7 years, 7.5 years when he lost to Brewster. Basically, Klitschko was fighting in these controlled situations for most of his career up until that point. And they were lining up bums. And he would just go in there and overwhelm people with his size, his strength, and his athleticism. When you got in there with a couple of guys, Corey Sanders, Layman Brewster, that could take that punishment and dish out their own, Wladimir just did not know how to act. But that last loss was 11.5 years ago. Klitschko was 42-3 through the first 7.5 years of his career when he took those 3 losses. He's 22-0 in the 11.5 years since. What does that tell you? Well, obviously he's fighting less. He's fighting less because he's taking training camp more seriously. He's sparred countless number of rounds in that Crump gym system with Emmanuel Stewart and now Jonathan Banks. He makes a game plan for each particular opponent. It's all very systematic, some would say robotic, but this is a different Wladimir Klitschko than the guy who took those early losses in every way, but especially in terms of defense, positioning, spacing, timing, distance, all of those things, especially balance. That's the biggest thing Emmanuel Stewart taught Wladimir Klitschko, footwork, balance. Now let's talk about the chin. No one's going to say Wladimir Klitschko has a granite, solid rock chin, okay? But to say that he has a shit chin, he has a glass chin, you cannot accomplish what the man has accomplished in boxing if you have a horrible chin. Your chin has to not only be average, but dare I say, above average. I know the haters are fuming mad when I say that. I'm not saying his chin's granite, guys, but it's gotta be better than average to last this long. And in recent years, we've seen Klitschko take shots. You know, Kubrat Pulev landed several 1-2s right on the button. I was ringside in New York earlier this year when Klitschko took on Bryant Jennings. Jennings landed a few right hands that snapped Vlad's head back. There's been other fighters in recent years. Sam Peter in the rematch. Tony Thompson put leather on him. Mariusz Wach, the huge Polish guy that got busted for steroids, he landed shots. David Haye landed shots. On and on I could go. Klitschko knows how to respond now. The shots he's taken in recent years are the same shots that put him on his ass earlier on. And I get it. Wladimir, I think he went down like 12 times during that first 7 or 8 years of his career that I talked about. But he never failed to beat a 10 count. That tells me that the problem wasn't physical, it was mental, it was emotional. He didn't know what to do, he panicked, he freaked out, and that guy is gone. If you haven't been paying attention for the last decade, that fighter is gone. Klitschko hater talking point number 3. Vlad's boring. Okay, now, this is one that's hard to defend. And I am not going to pretend that Wladimir Klitschko is the most consistently exciting fighter right up there alongside guys like Gennady Triple G Golovkin. Vlad has had some absolute stinkers, okay? The two that really pop in my mind are the fight with Povetkin, which was just awful, and the fight with Bragimov. That was awful too. There's been plenty of just boring, horrible fights that I can't even watch a second time. And I'm a fan of the guy. But there's also been some highlight reel stuff, okay? The fight against Pulev, which I mentioned before. Styles make fights. And Klitschko has proved that with a specific type of dance partner, he can be exciting. But with most fighters, Vlad, this new, mature, prime version of Vlad, is totally happy winning on the cards, dominating with his size, his reach, his tactical clinching and holding, doing what he's got to do to stay safe, not take any crazy risks. He will go for the knockout, but he won't leave himself vulnerable doing so, right? Now, I totally understand if this is not your cup of tea. It's not mine particularly. I happen to watch Klitschko because there's always the chance for that knockout. That's why I watch his fights. But there's many fights of his I've never seen more than once, okay? What I don't understand from some of you haters out there is that you'll chastise Klitschko for his defensive-minded style, a style that's made him the longest reigning champion in the sport right now. Yet you applaud people like Floyd Mayweather. You applaud people like Bernard Hopkins, who had some crazy bad stinker fights in his prime when he was owning the middleweight division. You know, there are many other fighters I could name, and I could go back to some of the all-time great heavyweights. Guys, go watch some Jack Johnson fights. Go watch some of the old-timers. Watch how they fought. Grappling and mauling and wrestling was part of boxing back then, especially with heavyweights. And as a big guy myself, 6'4", 220 pounds, I haven't sparred that many rounds, but I've sparred a few in my day, and I can tell you, 1 or 2 athletic moves, you know, like a step, a pivot, 1 punch, 2 punches, you're together. 2 big guys in that ring, it doesn't take much before you're together. And I get it that the Klitschko holding and clinching is nauseating at times. But again, two things. Again, number one, if you're gonna hate on Vlad for doing it, you should hate on Floyd Mayweather and other guys for doing it just as much. But number two, holding is a two-way street, okay? Clinching and holding, it's not, one guy's doing it, one guy's executing it, but another guy's allowing it to happen. Again, I'll go to the fight with Bryant Jennings, which I was ringside for earlier this year. It was right up there. I could see the body language of the fighters in a different way than you can see on TV. okay? Seeing it ringside is just different. And Jennings was not allowing Klitschko to just hold him and nullify him. Jennings was getting off to the body. He was throwing crazy looping shots, over the top, hitting Klitschko on the back of his head and the side of his head. He was using that free hand. And you best believe he was trying to push Vlad off of him. He was getting nasty with his head at times. He was doing whatever he had to do to let Vlad know, hey man, I'm not gonna allow you to just do this to me. But also to make it very evident to the referee that he wasn't allowing it to happen. He was working. He was trying to prevent the holding. The referee sees fighter A trying to clinch, fighter B fighting the clinch and working, and eventually the ref will take a point from fighter A. But when fighter B simply submits, as Alexander Povetkin did, and just lets the guy hold him, can you blame the fighter? Wladimir Klitschko hater talking point number 4, Vitaly's better. Okay, now this is just a matter of taste, I suppose, but I just wanted to put some perspective out here. And I say this as a guy who started off as a Vitaly fan, but it is night and day, guys. Wladimir Klitschko not only has over 20 more professional fights than Vitaly, but going back to the amateur days, Vitaly got busted for steroids, so he couldn't go in the Olympic Games. Wladimir passed the drug test and ended up going to the Olympics and getting the gold medal, as I mentioned earlier. So Vlad's amateur record was light years better than Vitaly's. But in the professional ranks, you guys forget, Vitaly was retired between 2004, 2008, and that's when Wladimir started his reign and literally wiped out the heavyweight division. Vitaly came back for 4 years, fought for the last time in 2012, but for you guys to say that Wladimir essentially shared this era with his brother, that's just not true. Now, I'm not even gonna get into a breakdown of the Vitaly Klitschko-Lennox Lewis fight, but that seems to be what you guys rate Vitaly Klitschko's career by. Guys, it was a loss. And again, I'm saying this as a Vitaly fan, but to rate his entire career and to say that he would beat Wladimir based off of what you saw in that fight with Lennox Lewis. Look, Lennox Lewis was 256 pounds for that fight. He was coming off a 1-year layoff. He was the heaviest, the fattest he had ever been. Vitaly had him badly hurt in the second round and could not close the show. He worked with a horrible cut for 4 rounds. The ring doctor was consistently coming around looking at the cut. They had to know their time was limited. He didn't get the job done, guys. To rate Vitaly higher than Wladimir based off that one fight and off a few losses Wladimir had early on, I just think that's ridiculous. Klitschko hater talking point number 5, no signature opponent. Okay, this is another one that is really, really hard to argue, right? There really hasn't been a signature opponent or rival in Vladimir's career. There's been a couple guys he rematched, and fought a couple times, but there was guys we thought might be that signature opponent, like David Haye, but he turned out to be a bust, and there were others along the way. But there's one guy right now who might fit the bill. Deontay Wilder is everything the mainstream sports media in America wants in a heavyweight champion. And with a lot of fans out there, boxing fans, especially people in that Al Heyman bubble, what they want to see in a heavyweight champion. Look, let's just put it out there. Deontay Wilder's American. He's black. He's undefeated. Has that O, that magical O that you seem to love so much. He's tatted up. He talks trash. He's dynamic. He goes for the knockout. He's exciting. He's everything you guys want. And he has a title, and he's legitimized himself with that win over Berman Stavern, who, say what you will about him, he's a legit heavyweight. If Wladimir Klitschko could get that guy, there's the signature opponent. A fight between Klitschko and Wilder would not only unify every sanctioning organization title for the first time in heavyweight history, since we've had this many different sanctioning bodies. They've never all been unified, right? All 5 of them, or however damn many there is. It's not only that, It'd be the heavyweight fight of this era. It'd be two guys who are legitimate. It would be the old school guy, Vlad, who's in the twilight of his career, and the new upstart, Deontay Wilder. I'd love to see that fight happen. I don't know if it will. I don't think Al Heyman's gonna allow it. Is that Wladimir Klitschko's fault? We know Wladimir Klitschko will make concessions. He went above and beyond to David Haye. He gave that dude 50-50 in a fight that he didn't really even deserve, that he ducked for years. Vlad bent over backwards to make that fight happen with David Haye. There's no doubt in anyone's mind that's in the boxing business that Klitschko would do whatever it took to make that fight with Deontay Wilder happen. If it doesn't happen, it's not on Vlad. It's not even on Deontay Wilder. It's on Deontay Wilder's advisor. I have to give Klitschko this much credit, okay? There's been opportunities to fight an ancient Evander Holyfield, a completely brain-dead James Toney, even a guy like Shannon Briggs, who was briefly the linear heavyweight champion. He's been chasing Vlad for years. Vlad doesn't want to fight these guys, even though it'd be a name on his resume, because he would hurt them. He doesn't want to hurt these guys, and I give him respect for that. You look back throughout heavyweight history, and there's a pattern of guys who their major marquee signature win was over a really shot former champ. Lennox Lewis over Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson over Holmes. Holmes over Ali. You can go back to Marciano over Lewis, even though that wasn't for the championship, but he had to beat Lewis to get in line for the championship. On and on it goes, right? Even Jack Johnson over Jim Jeffries. He was coming off a huge layoff, right? That's gone on forever. But Klitschko kind of broke that tradition. He won't give the fight to Holyfield. He won't give the fight to those old shot fighters. He wants the new upstarts. He wants to fight them. I mentioned before, Pulev, Jennings, now Fury, undefeated top heavyweights who have come up in recent years. Deontay Wilder is those guys, but he's the best of them, right? He's the cream of the crop. He grabbed the title. That signature opponent, it is lacking. If Wladimir can get it, that might be the thing that elevates him from number 9 or 10 all time to maybe number 4 or 5. Yes, I'm saying it. If he doesn't get that fight, even if the Deontay Wilder fight doesn't happen, even if Vlad just continues doing what he's doing for the next couple of years, we know he's going to usurp Larry Holmes as number 2 in all-time consecutive heavyweight title defenses. We know he's going to get there. He's probably not going to beat Joe Louis's record of 25 straight, because that would take several years, and the guy's almost 40. We know he's going to probably usurp Joe Louis's consecutive reign as champion, the 11 years, 8 months, I think I said it was. Vlad will have that in 2 more years. When you look at the numbers, when you look at the fact the guy took on all comers, when you look at everything I've laid out for you guys, I don't know how you can deny, even if you're the biggest hater in the world, even if the guy's style drives you nuts, he is an all-time great heavyweight if he were to retire right now. If he continues doing what he's done for the next couple years, he's even higher ranked all time. And he should be on everyone's pound for pound list right now, right behind Floyd Mayweather.